Next News, breaking news.
Tonight, the cover may finally be blown in Minnesota. Yesterday, federal agents stormed 22 locations tied to daycare and autism service programs, and what they found points to something far bigger than paperwork errors. We're talking about empty facilities, questionable billing, and taxpayer money flowing through places neighbors say barely appeared to operate at all. Then came the most shameless part. Tim Walz tried to take credit for the crackdown, but Vice President Vance just flattened that spin with a brutal line. If Walz let this machine run under his watch, how deep does the rot really go? Now, this matters to every American watching because this is your money. These are public funds meant to help children, families, and vulnerable people who actually need care. Instead, investigators are tracing allegations that some centers billed for services never provided, padded enrollment, and pulled huge sums of money from programs that were supposed to serve the public. That means honest families get squeezed, legitimate providers get undercut, and trust in basic services gets wrecked. Politically, this is devastating for the left's favorite playbook because for years, anyone pointing at fraud in Minnesota risked being smeared, dismissed, or called names. Now federal agents and DHS are doing what state leadership failed to do: follow the money. President Trump's administration has made clear that the era of looking the other way is over. This is what America First Law and Order looks like: protecting taxpayers, backing real investigators, and refusing to let activist politicians hide behind press releases while fraud networks feast on public cash. When we're talking about protecting America from systems that leave us exposed, there's another major Trump-era move you need to know about happening right now. This breaking news: the White House just announced over $30 billion to secure America's critical mineral supply chains and named a specific Alaskan project as a key strategic asset for U.S. mineral independence. That's a huge America First move, and it connects directly to Vizsla Copper. Now, I've been to the Vizsla Copper drilling site myself in Canada. I've seen it with my own eyes. And what's happening right now in Alaska is bigger than most people realize. President Trump just unveiled Project Vault, a $12 billion strategic mineral reserve designed to stockpile essential resources and keep America strong, secure, and less dependent on foreign rivals. Vizsla Copper trades in the United States under VCUFF and in Canada as VCU.V. Check the exclusive briefing. It's only for Next News viewers. It's linked below to see why this story is getting some serious attention. Now back to the Minnesota fraud story, because the more officials talk, the worse it gets for Tim Walz. See, here's the twist that blows apart the whole media-safe version of the story. Vice President J.D. Vance says that Walz's office was not the engine behind the operation at all. In fact, Vance said that the federal help came from federal officers and state and local law enforcement assigned to the task force, because in his words, the state government wasn't doing anything. That means Walz isn't standing on a record of action here. He's standing in front of a camera after the feds showed up with warrants. Here's some more news. As it broke, the FBI raided more than 20 locations, some of them Somali-run daycare centers, as part of a federal fraud investigation. The story is still developing.
To our top story this hour, the FBI and BCA carrying out raids today on 22 daycare and autism centers. There are multiple investigations into widespread fraud in Minnesota. Fox 9's Karen Scullin joining us live from the Quality Learning Center tonight in Minneapolis with what we know so far. So what have you learned today, Karen?
No. It's Quality Learning Center, ma'am. Learning.
One of the locations that were raided in today's operation, as you mentioned, is the Quality Learning Center,
Leering.
or as it was famously misspelled, the Quality Learning Center. Now, it's been closed, it looks like, since about January, but a lot of these daycares and centers that were raided today were open and operating when these raids took place. As you mentioned, there were 22 locations that were raided. It wasn't just daycares, but also autism centers. It also wasn't just Minneapolis. We're talking cities like Fridley, Savage, Mendota Heights, and others that were involved in today's action by federal and state law enforcement.
So, raids hitting 22 Minnesota sites. Then Tim Walz rushed in to claim it made it happen. Nick Shirley reminds viewers that what Walz said when people first exposed the fraud. Tim Walz called me a far-right delusional conspiracy theorist and said exposing the fraud in his state was white supremacy. It was the classic false smear tactic that has worked for so long, but it didn't work this time. Tim was exposed and he dropped out of his gubernatorial race. Tim leered. Shirley says Walz tried the usual smear job when the fraud was called out. Now here is the vice president.
This is like the arsonist trying to claim credit for the work of the fire department, because Tim Walz let this fraud happen under his watch. Whether he was complicit in it directly himself or just turned a blind eye towards it, we really did not get much help at all from the governor's office. Where we did actually get some help was from some state, local law enforcement officers who we assigned to the federal task force because the state government wasn't doing anything. So all credit goes to people on the ground, the federal officers, the state officers who are working to uncover this fraud.
J.D. Vance making it quite clear. And of course, here's the post that Touchdown Timmy, or Tampon Tim, excuse me. If you commit fraud in Minnesota, you're going to get caught. And that's exactly what we saw today. We catch criminals when state and federal agencies share information. Joint investigations work, and securing justice depends on it. Yeah, sure. See, that's the real revelation. This was not a proud victory lap for Minnesota Democrats. It was a rescue mission after a breakdown of oversight. J.D. Vance putting it perfectly. This is like the arsonist trying to claim credit for the fire department. Whether Walz was directly complicit or simply asleep at the switch, the result's the same. Fraud allegedly grew large enough to justify a 22-location federal operation. Some of the sites reportedly had little to no real activity, yet taxpayer dollars kept on moving. That tells you the system was not just weak, it was permissive. And now that President Trump's back in office, the adults are in charge, the federal government is moving, and the old protection racket is being dragged out into the light. So here's the bottom line. The raids were real, the money trail appears real, and the excuses are falling apart in real time. Tim Walz can post all he wants, self-congratulatory statements, but Americans can see what this looks like. First, the fraud warnings were mocked. Then the critics were smeared. Now the warrants are served, and the spin machine is in panic mode. That's not leadership. That is exposure. So if you believe that every official who ignored this should be investigated, I want you to do one thing for me. Share this report right now. And then drop a comment and answer this simple yes or no question. Should Tim Walz be hauled in and questioned about how this fraud was allowed to grow on his watch? Subscribe if you want the stories the corporate media won't touch, but we'll do it here at the Next News Network. And text the words raw feed to 844-840-4963 so the algorithm cannot bury these updates. We'll send you the notifications right to your phone when YouTube doesn't. And we'll do it when it matters most. Make sure you check out the Next News merch shelf below this video. America's taking its country back, and the truth is finally getting back up.
The system controls information. Information control is power. They don't want you to see this. The truth only survives together. They don't want this shared. Share this now.